Hello, everyone. Welcome into the Cherokee County Endzone podcast. I am your host, Will Cooper, joined alongside my co-host, who I said last week was the most handsome man in North Georgia, but I would like to retract that and tell you he is the most handsome man in the entire Peach State, as well as the most educated on high school football that you will find this side of the Mississippi, truly, and is my longtime friend, longtime broadcast partner. You all know him and you all love him. It is Art Mosley. Art, how are you doing, my friend?
Coop, I'm going to have to increase the per diem I pay you to say all those nice things about me, man. The embellishment is getting really deep. I would take maybe one of the more knowledgeable guys in Cherokee County, maybe North Georgia, maybe one of the top 10 in the state. But man, you went east of the Mississippi, man. That's we're going to have some upset folks testing my knowledge this week. And man, I'm going to have to brush up on my facts. And what I'm certainly going to have to do is brush up on my picks here later on today, and we'll get into that discussion. But before we even talk about high school football, Coop, something I did want to get off my chest, man, the queen of country music, Dolly Parton, passing away as we record on Tuesday earlier today. And just want to make mention of that. Of course, famous songs like Jolene, your classic movies like 9 to 5, and certainly the purveyor of Dollywood up in Tennessee. But just a fantastic impact she's had on many generations in this country. You know, from young fans to old fans, and again, spanning such a great time frame. Dolly Parton passes away, 80 years old, Coop. And so I just want to make mention of that as we get started here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the finest people in an industry that has a lot of people that go down the wrong rails, including in that generation. And she was just one of the, you could tell she was just a good person. I think the cultural impact matches how good of a, kind of like Jimmy Buffett.
Yeah.
Like just kind of, Jimmy Buffett kind of made his own genre, but one of those people that you just kind of felt like Jimmy Buffett was just a really good guy. Never heard anything bad about him. Same thing with Dolly. So I think it makes it a little more sad, but it's good to know she's going to be with her husband now, who passed away last year in March, and, lived a full life. 80 years isn't bad. So, but, thoughts and prayers with the family. And I know even for some people, celebrity deaths can feel very personal. So we, send our love to you as well. But great point, Art, because it is a sad day in truly American pop culture and for country fans across the world.
Absolutely. That's a tough transition to make, Coop. We're going to try to do it here tonight as we jump into high school football and our podcast, as we cover here Cherokee County high school football here on the Cherokee County Endzone. Coop, we're going to review some of the action from last week along with some previews. All 6 county teams will be in action. We'll talk about our little contest we've got shaking, the man versus a machine I alluded to a little bit earlier. We'll talk our power rankings, our much discussed power rankings, maybe discussed in circles that we are not even aware of, Coop. And we know we've got listeners all across the area who tune in and maybe want to weigh in with us on Twitter at some point to talk about our rankings and where we see the teams in county this week. And then, of course, if time permits, I'll let you know a little bit about the game that I'll be at on Friday night. And of course, you can let us know where you will be on Friday night. But a lot to get to, Coop. I think we need to go ahead and jump into it unless I've missed anything.
No, I think you got it. Let's start with some football, man. And just like we always do, we'll move in alphabetical order. So I'll let you get on your soapbox and preach about your favorite team in the county. That is the Cherokee Warriors. Yeah, man. My favorite team. You're absolutely right. The Cherokee Warriors were in action. I had a chance to take that game in. And I want to tell you, Coop, the Cherokee County School District, the only complaint I have for the new Tommy Baker Field and all the festivities that were going on out there this weekend was that the sun still sets in the home team's face. Other than that, I think that, and for those that are listening and not watching, Coop has got his hands on his head like, what are we doing here, folks? But the facility was phenomenal. Had a chance to speak with a ton of folks over there at Cherokee and just a ton of pride that community and that school has taken on. And I tell you what, that early in the game, it looked like it was going to be an outstanding night for the Warriors as they go up 7-0 on a 42-yard touchdown run. But after that, Coop, it was all Lassiter coming back and scoring 28. I believe actually when it was all said and done, 35 unanswered, but 20
21 unanswered points in the first, and really put the game away early in the third quarter with another touchdown. Des Murphy did pick up 79 yards on 12 carries, again the 42-yard touchdown run, and then Aiden Jackson also had a touchdown run late in the game. Zach Parker, 201 yards passing, was intercepted on a play that we thought could have been a pass interference call on Lassiter, but the Trojans really were in control of that game almost, after that first drive. I do want to mention a couple of guys for Cherokee defensively that stood out. Certainly Trenton Barnett with 4 tackles and 3 assists. And then Jackson Hearn with 10 solo tackles and 3 tackles for loss. He really showed up, especially in that second half, and I think that's when those 3 tackles for loss occurred. So 11 total tackles on the night for Hearn, just a junior linebacker. So definitely a bright spot for the Warriors. I think, we don't talk a ton about injuries, but the injury bug did hit Cherokee early. And so I think that definitely had an impact on their ability to get a ton of rhythm offensively. But, got to have it's a long season. And at this point, you got to turn around and become Lassiter fans because, to hope that that strength of schedule will continue and their winning percentage will continue. But, they've got a new opponent coming in, and I'll go ahead and get your take on it. And before we talk about this week's opponent.
Yeah, look, I mean, we call this overreaction week for a reason, right? Because we have no standard to start a measuring stick with. So we all are looking at this and saying, oh my gosh, they lost to Lassiter by 21. They must be horrible. Well, the reality is we don't know what Lassiter is. I mean, they could be a team that, we've talked a lot about them over the last 3 weeks about how they've improved. And we've heard that from a number of coaches, even behind the scenes, that have said this is not a Lassiter team that we expect to take a step back despite their graduations. So, if Lassiter is a team that we look at and say, at the end of the season and they're competing in Region 6, 6A for a title, or if they're a solid playoff team, then okay, early season, new building, a lot of hype, a lot of things can change. So we can excuse that. So I would just caution everyone, not only with Cherokee, but as we move forward, that any results from week 1, we don't have any metric to what that means for you. We might look at it and say, from the outside, it looked like you played well. From the outside, it looked like you didn't, but there's no objective way that we can measure you yet. So for Cherokee fans, keep your head up. You get to host again this week, South Forsyth. You mentioned that. It's a game that is probably a winnable game for you. We'll get into South Forsyth a little bit here, but just don't go over the hill and, jump the shark and say, you know what, who cares? Because that's really not what to do in week 1, especially.
Right. And again, I want to, I know we're a Cherokee County podcast, but I do want to give Lassiter their credit. Caden Jones, a sophomore in his first start, completing 70% of his passes for 205 yards, 3 touchdowns. Maybe one of the biggest differences in that ball game was the experience coming back for Lassiter at wide receiver when Bryce Kitchrow, Drew, and Collins Price, that trio combined for 11 catches and 3 touchdowns, Coop. So, and the lion's share of that 205 yards passing for Lassiter. So it was tough for a young Sequoia secondary, especially the way Lassiter plays with very short drops and the reads are just kind of like a 3-step drop, and that was just tough for Cherokee to defend and really get any disruption along that to that Lassiter offense. So they'll have to certainly find a way to do that this week. As you mentioned, they do welcome the South Forsyth Eagles in, who have kind of had a resurgence for a team that was, I don't want to say putrid because I think that's unfair, but a team that had some struggles a year ago.
Yeah, they certainly did. And you look at what they did week 1. Again, we don't have any measuring stick, but they did beat Duluth. They went on the road and beat Duluth. It moved them up to, a pretty good spot. They're just marginally ahead of Cherokee in their power ranking now, as far as the Cooper Predictor goes. It doesn't mean they're going to win or lose. Just throwing that out there. But it was a good win for South Forsyth. They're a team that is, again, a 7A team that is one of those that's kind of in the same conversation with Cherokee that we've said, hey, if you win these games, we'll feel a lot better about you. Well, South Forsyth got on the right foot. Cherokee got off on the wrong foot. So either a win for Cherokee here would do wonders for us as, statisticians, commentators, whatever you want to say, okay, we can look at Lassiter a little differently and not just say, well, that's Cherokee's fault. It may be a very good team you played. So to your point, even the eye test, Lassiter looked much improved from what you would typically see when Lassiter runs on the field. So it's an interesting dynamic. I know you've got a lot of breakdown on this one, so I'll turn it back over to you before we do our predictions on this one.
Yeah, first and foremost, you get a team that is rebuilding, but they had a young man move in from quarterback over from South Carolina, Kyle Sam Thong Talia, number 10 for short. If you're a Cherokee Warrior, he's a starting quarterback. Completion percentage not off the chart at 52% last week, but he did throw for 252 yards and 3 touchdowns, was picked off once. Coop, he's dual threat quarterback. He's one of the top rated quarterbacks in the class of 2029, as he is just a sophomore. Fong Talia rushed for 101 yards as well in the victory. He found on the connection with a couple of receivers, one in particular, Carter Ross, who was one of their leading receivers coming back anyway. Ross caught 5 passes for 101 yards for the South Forsyth Eagles. Coop, I think this is an improved team, but again, you mentioned it. We don't want to overreact too much as we don't know how great Duluth was. And I think you're going to see another team, just like most teams, South Forsyth going to run it out of the shotgun. They'll mix in the pass a little bit, but I think they'll be very similar to a couple of teams that or one team, Cherokee, you'll see down the road in the Etowah Eagles, where you have a dual threat quarterback with a live arm. So the big question is, can Cherokee find a way to get pressure on the quarterback? And I don't know exactly what that looks like. Do they find a way to send a backer on a blitz or mix in a corner blitz? I know their secondary is youthful at Cherokee. So as those guys grow up and get better, that will certainly help their cause. But right now, I think if you're Cherokee and you allow Fong Talia to sit back there and with 3, 4, 5 seconds to go through his progressions, it might be a long night for Cherokee. So you got to find a way to get pressure on the quarterback. Meanwhile, if I can jump over to Cherokee, I think you still have to find a way to establish the run game and then a little bit more vertical passing game. We saw some potential there on Friday night, and I think Cherokee's young receivers are going to have to go out and like I use a phrase on the radio, like you said, they got to get a little HBO on Friday night. They got to help a brother out. So some of those young receivers are going to have to step up on Friday night. We saw them make some catches here and there, but Parker's going to have to find a reliable receiver, and I think he'll do it. I think that's just part of the growing pain of losing your top 5 or 6 receivers from a year ago, and with you're starting over fresh. And so I think it's going to be a competitive football game. I don't want to, like you said, it was for us. It was overreaction Saturday when we were kind of looking at the results, and I don't think it's time to overreact. We get the run game going to take some pressure off of Parker and allow him to get back there. And maybe that's something that Cherokee does, man. Shorten up his reads and kind of, I don't want to say simplify as a playbook, but, maybe simplify a few things so that it comes easier as those young receivers come along and they and Parker work together. But I'm looking for a competitive ball game on Friday night, Coop.
Yeah, we certainly think it will be. This is a rare moment in the predictor where what I see behind the scenes and what you guys see on the website disagrees. So based on the margin, South Forsyth in the back end, the true pure numbers, is projected to win by 0.2 points. On the website, you will see it as a Cherokee win. The reason for that is that when it goes to the public side, we normalize the football scores. So what I see behind the scenes is not the same thing you guys see because we always round to the nearest number. Well, when rounding to the nearest number, Cherokee makes up the point back and then picks up the win. But it does sit on the website at a 50% win probability, which is the model telling you truly it has no idea. It's saying it's a true 50-50. And when we rate it, we will, if Cherokee wins, it'll go as a win, but it'll go in our column as basically saying we knew we didn't know, and that's okay.
Yeah, Coop, and I'll go ahead and say it, man. I might lose my privileges over at Cherokee High School with my prediction here, but I think Fontaglia is the real deal. I think it will be a quarterback duel, but I like South Forsyth by 10 until I can see that Cherokee can really run the football. I think that might be a bugaboo. So I think the Warriors put more points on the board this week against the South Forsyth defense, but I think the Eagles take it by 10.
All right. Well, it's hard to argue with you on that until we see something else. And obviously you saw him in person, so I'll trust you a little bit more than I'll trust me. But as always, I will stand behind the predictor. So, or with the predictor, because I don't want to say if I stand behind it. Sounds like I'm using it as a cop-out. I'm not. I'm putting my name's on it. It's got my name. So
you're standing on business, man. You're standing on business.
There you go. Absolutely. So, let's move on to our next team. We'll move again in alphabetical order. That takes us up the road to Owen Store Road, where we'll talk about the Creekview Grizzlies coming off a 33-0 win against Forsyth Central. Art, I want to get your thoughts on this. This was a game that at half, we're sitting there looking at scores and saying 0-0. What's going on?
I thought there was something wrong with my score app, Will, when I was looking at it, and then had a chance to go back and kind of get a quick watch of the football game and realize that no, nothing was wrong with the score app. It was just a game that was played really in between the 30s, and maybe a game which both teams are trying to feel each other out. Game took a turn. An injury occurred with one of the Forsyth Central players, and then I don't want to say that was the what took the wind out of Forsyth Central sails. But certainly after that point, it was all Creekview. They go on for a big win to win this game, 33-0. And it was their first shutout since October of 2022. So kudos to the Grizzlies defense, regardless of what we think about the offense. But, Landon Barnes was completed 60% of his passes for 165 yards. And Carson Lott did Carson Lott things with 88 yards on 13 carries. But how about Jax Howard? And I think that's a name that Coach Trevor Williams mentioned during our preseason show, man. He carried the ball 5 times for 74 yards. So maybe a change of pace back developing for the Creekview Grizzlies. And so I think that's a big win for that program, big win for that community to get started on the right foot for Creekview.
Yeah, it certainly did a lot for them in the predictors' eyes. First of all, it shot their playoff percentage way up. They currently sit at 63.8% playoff odds. It's moved them also with the losses with Rome and Kell. It also has moved them into the conversation of the region title world, which is something that I did not expect to say after week 1. So that's an interesting note. It also moved them up in the Georgia rankings into the top 100. So there's a lot of things that, and we talked about this, and I won't spend too long on it, but the model is going to give you a projected score. And I keep saying that's not the key number. The key number is the win probability. This is a prime example of why, is that Creekview didn't win by as much as the model thought they were going to. So a lot of models out there will say, well, you underperformed from what we thought, so your rating is going to go down somehow. Our model doesn't do that. It's saying we gave you a 91% chance to win the game, and you won the game, so you get the 100% win chance. That means that you improved. Congratulations. So there's no team that gets punished for winning games. So I like that about our model, and you see that in Creekview as well. And that's very pertinent to what's going to come up this week as they play North Springs, which is, again, another game that I think you and I and the math behind it agree that this is a game that Creekview probably looks to win.
But man, this might not be your mom's and dad's North Springs Spartan football team, Coop. North Springs, a team that has struggled mightily over the past few seasons. Haven't been in the playoffs, I believe, since maybe 16 or 17. They go out and beat River Ridge, a faux Riverwood. Thank you very much. Nope. I don't want to. I want to stay out there. River. Yeah, I'm gonna catch some flack for that. But they go out and beat Riverwood 48-12. Okay, and Riverwood, a team that we're familiar with last few seasons, and in terms of region play with some of our Cherokee County teams. But this was their first week one win, I believe since 2017. So it's been like 9 years since they've won their opening week game. They scored 48 points. That's the most they've scored in a game since they beat Clarkston back in 2024. And oh, by the way, they only scored 64 points total last year, did North Springs. And so they certainly flipped the script with 48. They, do the math. They're only 16 points away from besting their point total a year ago. The player that Creekview's defense is going to have to watch out for, in my opinion, is quarterback Zaire Sykes. He threw for 228 yards and a touchdown, and then Daniel Harris on the ground had 112 yards and 2 touchdowns. They were about as balanced as you can get, North Springs, 228 yards in the air, 229 yards on the ground. So I think you're going to get an extremely balanced attack from this North Springs Spartan defense. They bring back a couple of all-region performers, specifically Adonis Timmons. He led the team in tackles with 11, and sophomore Rainen Woods also had 10 tackles. It seems like Walter Vaughn, who's a first-year head coach, very successful outing. Again, don't want to overreact too much. We know that River Wood has been kind of on a downturn in terms of the talent of that program. But North Springs went out and did what they had to do in the battle of Sandy Springs, if you will, and got the victory. And I think that's a team that is a dangerous team for Creekview because now they're playing with confidence. And if you're Creekview, you can't look at the history book and say, oh, well, North Springs is awful. We own the series record against them. The last time we played them, it was 52-7. Should it be 52-7 this year? I don't know. I think there's a lot of speed on that North Springs side. So I think that will certainly be something that Creekview will have to find a way to neutralize. I expect for the Grizzlies to again, really try to punish North Springs on the ground. That's been their MO. And then, at opportune times, pop them for a pass with quarterback Landon Barnes. Name we haven't mentioned is Derek Mazak. He had a couple of receptions. Zach Reese also is becoming a burgeoning superstar for the Grizzlies at wide receiver. So I think the Grizzlies' identity kind of wears down North Springs. I believe Creekview will get on the board earlier in the ball game, but I think their identity and a couple of guys, in my opinion, to pay attention to defensively for the Grizzlies, Landon Parker and Jackson Tyson, linebackers, I think that are really coming along. That before it's all said and done, we talked about who are the next guys on that Creekview front seven. I think those are two guys that we'll be talking about before the season's over with.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you mentioned a really important point about this is that this game is at Creekview, which we know recently, historically as well, Creekview performs significantly better on offense at home compared to the road. So hopefully this is a game that you're not seeing 0 points for the Grizzlies in the first half. Hopefully they get off to a faster start. Typically they do in the Den, so we feel pretty good about that. You mentioned confidence in this game. The model said we were confident last week and we're more confident now. 98% win probability for the Grizzlies.
All right. And I'm with you. I like the Grizzlies by 13. I think this game's going to be closer than some people would expect, but I'm looking at maybe a 34-21 type ball game. Creekview comes out on top.
I'll withhold my margin because it's just so rat poisony that it doesn't do anybody any good. You can go to the website if you want to see it, but
what are we talking about? Creekview by 90 here?
Creekview by 35.
Okay. Well, hey, look, you know what? Put it out there, man. If they win 42-7, then we'll have
so we got it 41-6. That's our predicted score. So I mean, if it gets up 42-7, we'll take the victory lap on that.
And I'll be willing to celebrate that as well, man, because that would have been a heck of a pick coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, no kidding.
Coop, let's move on to our defending county champions and the only team that I have ranked in a top 10 poll in the county, the Sequoia Chiefs, and got off to a little bit of a slow start against the Denmark Danes, but ended up rolling. 36-7 was the final. And I tell you what, we thought the Chiefs would suffer with Will Rzadecki kind of moving on to the college level at University of Tennessee. But I tell you what, Trace Washington exploded onto the scene with 174 yards and 2 touchdowns on 12 attempts. Nolan Shakar, steady 8 of 13 for 104 yards. And also Robert Van Alstyne played at Creekview last year. For those that don't know, his dad is a principal over at Sequoia. He moves over to the Chiefs. He led the team in receiving with 7 catches for 67 yards. And it was really all Sequoia all night long. Drew Williams, 13 total tackles, had a sack, 3 tackles for loss. Brady Streeter is a name that along that defense at linebacker, who led the team in total tackles with 14, had 5 tackles for loss, also had a sack. I think that's a name that we're going to hear more and more about as the season goes on. And you've got Streeter, Drew Williams, and throwing Washington in the mix. And it still remains to be seen how much he'll play because he's playing both ways. But this Sequoia defense kind of flexed their muscle against a team that had given them fits over the last 2 times they played. Sequoia had to really eke out wins the last 2 times, but they were almost in midseason form. And we haven't even mentioned Leif Hansen, the place kicker, who might be one of the best, certainly in the county, probably in North Georgia, and maybe one of the best in the state.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's not a lot to dislike about what Sequoia did. You know, the one thing I'll say is that from watching the game, I had it on Friday night while listening to you guys over at Tommy Baker. First drive, you know, we got a fumbled snap that we fell on, and then a handoff that we fumbled and we fell on. And I'm sitting there going, oh no. Like, here it is. Here is the downfall. We found it. And then they were dang near, and I know the coaches will disagree with this because there's always things that they know that we don't, but dang near flawless the rest of the game. Clean game. You mentioned the defense was super impressive. Yeah, look, I mean, if you had any question about Trace Washington, go watch that 80-yard touchdown run. That dude, he's so reminiscent of Jahmyr Gibbs. I remember watching him at Creekview, and, you know, there was a game where Jahmyr just runs up the sideline and he's gone, and their safeties get blown away. It's the same thing. You know, Trace got up the sideline and then the safeties are irrelevant because he's just so dang fast. So all of that to say, Sequoia's lethal again. They're huge again. I was shocked when they ran out there. It's like, where are you finding these guys? You know, you guys are a 6A school in Cherokee County. Sometimes you're supposed to have a little fall off on size, but they look big. They look mean. They look well put together. I was very impressed with the quarterback play. I thought Nolan Shakur did a fantastic job. Again, a couple of mishaps to start, but after that, cleaned it up, found his composure. This is a very dangerous team that the model has really fallen in love with. They moved them up to number 6 in 6A. It's also put them now as the favorite to win the region, which has partially to do with what Sequoia did, but a lot more to do with Rome and Kell losing. But they have a 40% win region chance, which this is all rat poison sitting here in week 2. But I'm going to say it anyway, because why not? We even have them as a 53.6% chance to be a top 8 seed, 76% chance to win or to host a first round game, and their projected seed. So how we do this is we simulate the PSR by the letter of the GHSA rule. We do it 6,000 times, and then we find the mean, median, and mode. So we're going back to like 7th grade math here, so bear with me. But we find the mode of the data set. So what is the most common number that is picked up from that? And the most common number for Sequoia is they end up as the 7th seed. So there's a lot to like. Now, only it's one game. You know, we could be sitting here talking about a team that's going to end up going 6-4, 7-3. The model doesn't see it that way, and I realistically don't either. So congratulations to Sequoia. Again, we had them number 1 in our power ranking last week, and they're still the team to beat, it seems.
Well, and at the risk of throwing some shade on Sequoia's opponent this week, a team that was looking for that didn't have a ton of experience coming back. You know, you lose a ton of offensive production, and so I think that maybe plays into a little bit of it. But Sequoia doesn't have any control over Denmark's players. They got to run out and play who they play. So I'm not ready to anoint Sequoia as the favorite to win the region just yet, but they do look very strong. And I think that defense might be the key. Certainly, we can talk. I'll talk a little bit about region play here before we get into Sequoia Lambert. But having a chance to watch Kell last week, you know, they were without Mooney Gibson in week 1. He was still recovering from an injury he sustained in the playoffs last year. So to the extent we'll get to see him at some point, I would assume that's yes. And then Rome, I know they were dismantled by Carrollton, but I think, again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think if anybody's going to get Rome, this is a year to get them. And I think the things certainly there is a path for Sequoia to win a region title this year. And it won't be a fluke when they win it, but they're going to have to go dominate a Kell team and then, really beat a Rome team and then not have a slip up like, they did last year where River Ridge got them, sniped them. And, who knows? It could be Woodstock. It could be Creekview this year. Who knows? It could be Lassiter for all we know. So I think this is a very deep region in 6A. And everything is up for grabs right now. But let's talk a little bit about the Lambert Longhorns. I tell you, don't have a ton of information. I do know they like to throw it around the yard a ton. They've got a quarterback in Ryan Dice, who was 21 for 35 for 284 yards and 2 touchdowns a week ago. They'll run it out of the shotgun, Coop. I think most teams are now in that gun outside of, I think Sequoia is the only one who's willingly going under center. But even then, from time to time, or Gilmer. But he's got a couple of receivers that we can look out for. Lucas Gonzalez and Matisse St. John will be a couple of his targets. And I tell you what, if he's allowed to sit in the pocket, Ryan Dice is, and really, he can really pick a defense apart. As we mentioned, they did lose the Peachtree Ridge 36-28 last week. We did not see Ethan Chancellor a ton running the football. I think one of the things that the Chiefs will have to worry about is a couple of guys, Ife Joseph along the defensive line, and then a linebacker, Chris Oladeji. Oladeji led the team with 11 total tackles, had 2 tackles for loss, so he's a pretty active guy. Not a huge guy back there at 5'6", 174, so almost like one of those River Ridge linebackers we come to know. But I think Lambert will score points on Sequoia. Again, this is a 7A school as we talked about in our pre-show meeting. But I think Sequoia is just too good. With one person we didn't talk about in the review was Brody Craig along the offensive line. And I think you've got a guy like that anchoring that, and then a running back like Trace Washington. I think they will wear down this Lambert defense. This game will probably be a little bit closer than Sequoia's game last week. But I think the Chiefs will pull this out, and I'll go ahead and give you a score. I like Sequoia by 17 this week.
Yeah. Great points. I think the thing that surprises me when I looked at Sequoia is the model was very impressed with what they did at Denmark. And rightfully so. I mean, this was a game that even you and I had talked about last week and said, it's a game of unknowns because Sequoia is changing over so much, and Denmark's always played them close. What the model doesn't agree with you on is that this is going to be a high-scoring game for Lambert. It only sees 14 points for Lambert. And a lot of that comes from the fact that Peachtree Ridge was able to handle them last week, and Peachtree Ridge is one of the worst defenses in 7A. So it kind of looks at this and says, well, Sequoia is one of the best defenses in 6A, and how much does that ranking affect your rating, with classification included, which the model obviously does. So it likes Sequoia by a wide margin. It likes Sequoia by doing some quick math. It's 41-14, so that'd be 27 points. And it's hard to argue with them on that. It's a 90% win probability. So yet again, don't focus on the margin, focus on the win probability. We've got another week of 2 Cherokee County teams with above an 80% win probability.
Well, there you have it. I don't know if there's any much more to say other than we expect a Sequoia win. Will it be 17 or 27 points? And I don't know if Lambert listens, maybe they'll take some umbrage to what we're saying and come out, and that'll give them some bulletin board material. Or maybe Sequoia feels disrespected because we don't pick them to win by 90 or 37 or 54. But we'll see.
Yeah, who knows?
We'll see. And maybe that's a challenge for Coach Buddy that I don't believe in that defense just yet. But I say that tongue in cheek, Coop. Let's move on before I get myself in a whole lot of trouble here. The Woodstock Wolverines, man, on the short end of the stick again, a 1-score game, a 1-point game as they drop the game at home to Etowah. Etowah wins that 36-35. They'll have to quickly turn their attention to the Cambridge Bears. Cambridge lost in the opening week of the high school football season. I guess that was week 0. Maybe they're dubbing it week 1. That short week, they lost to the Brookwood Broncos, if I am not mistaken, Coop. And
You are
really,
correct.
it wasn't, the game looked like a game of have and have nots. I won't go ahead and recap that game for Cambridge. I will recap Woodstock's game. I think what we saw was Graham Burmeister doing what he does best, and that's making things happen. I think in that game, Etowah just made one more play. Burmeister threw for 216, rushed for 195 yards. I mean, those are video game numbers, had 4 rushing touchdowns. Ryland Hubbard led the team in receiving with 8 for 69. Aiken Kier caught 4 passes for 76 yards and a touchdown. Caleb Vigna recorded 12 tackles. I think that he might have even been the defensive player of the game for the Wolverines. Jabril Baugh had 8 tackles. Charlie Baldwin and Connor McCarthy had racked up a lot of tackles. So I think if you're Woodstock, very competitive. I know Coach Pierce is not going to sit here and say, "Oh, that was great losing to Etowah by 1." They want to win. But I think there's a lot to build off of here. One of the curious things, though, I would say, is that the amount of rushing yards that Burmeister had and how much they leaned on him in the ground game versus going to a guy like Zay Murphy.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say is that in one of those was an 80-yard touchdown run, so that number is a little bit skewed due to some explosive plays. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it was kind of I enjoyed watching it. I've said this multiple times off the show. It felt like when you watched this game last year, it was a great game. Obviously went to overtime, but it wasn't high execution. This game was much higher execution. It felt like we watched both teams improve in the offseason. And even both teams had guys that we didn't really anticipate coming into the year. For Woodstock, Yemi Kier or however you say that. I apologize if I mispronounced that. But he is a wide receiver that showed up big time. Again, a lot of his routes were opened up by Burmeister being such a dual threat that you kind of have to load the box, because even if he looks like a pass look, it's probably not, because he's just as likely to take off with it. All that being said, though, I feel like for Woodstock, this is yet again another example of where you and I and fans out there can overreact if we're not careful, because Etowah looked greatly improved. So if we look at this and say, "Oh man, Woodstock lost to Etowah. Etowah hasn't been to the playoffs since, Hector was a pup. We're going to be in big trouble." I don't think that's the case at all. I think Etowah is a very improved team. I think Woodstock is too. So I caution everyone from jumping off the cliff. Again, like we talked about with Cherokee, no reason to jump the shark. I know this loss stings in a big way. Last year was a heartbreaker, but at least it was at Etowah. This year was a heartbreaker, and it was at home, So all of that being said, this is a game that coming up this week with Cambridge that I feel like I don't really know what to feel about it, because kind of the same thing can be said for Cambridge, right? Like, you lost to a 7A Brookwood team that's teetering right on the top 10 in a lot of polls. Am I supposed to punish a 5A team a ton for being that way? Am I supposed to sell I don't know what to think about it. So all in all, I felt like the Battle of Town Lake showed a lot for Woodstock, some things that can be improved. We can't overstate the fact that was Coach Pierce's first game as the head coach, and that requires a little bit of time to adjust to. Even if I know he was there before, but even just putting your own thumbprint on that, on those units across how you do practice, as much as you try and keep it the same, there are differences. So I think that they'll grow into that a little bit more. I think this is a Woodstock team with a very high ceiling. The question is, how low does that floor go? And I think we'll find out a lot more about that this week as they play Cambridge.
Yeah, Cambridge, Coop, again, we talked about them in week 1 or week 0, however you want to say it. For the Bears, I believe it all starts with Brooks Malone, their running back. He only had 47 yards. Brookwood really bottled him up, 15 carries for 47 yards. I don't know if the Woodstock Wolverines defense is completely the same caliber as Brookwood right now. So I think the Bears will really look to get that ground game going. And they've got to find a way to keep some pressure off Marcus Turk. Turk, first-year starter. He was rattled in that first game. Again, a lot of pressure coming from a lot of different places. Will Woodstock be able to get some pressure on Turk. He was sacked 3 times. He only passed for 68 yards. You still have a young wide receiving core. I think Jonathan Orfis, who'll double up and play safety and wide receiver for Cambridge. But again, I would say maybe in a similar situation to Cherokee are the Bears with a limited experience. But again, Blake Higdon is a guy that'll try to get going at run behind on the offensive line with Malone, and I think you'll see a steady dose. We know Cambridge's head coach is a dynamic play caller, right? And it's not going to take him long to figure out. And once Marcus Turk gets settled in at quarterback, this could be a dangerous team. They play in a tough region. We won't deny that. So they've got some work to figure out. But I think if we're looking at the quarterback battle, I give the nod to Woodstock. Burmeister has a body of work that proves that he has been there and done that, and it's not hypothetical with Graham Burmeister. Again, I mentioned it before when I talked about the Etowah Woodstock game. I'd love to see them get Zay Murphy involved or whoever else at running back, but just to take maybe some of that pressure off Burmeister. But I have to imagine that if he's the best player on your football team, then you want the ball in his hands, 100% of the times. And he does get it at quarterback 100%. But, you got to like your chances with Graham Burmeister and the ball in his hands. And Rylan Hubbard, I thought was fantastic. I think he'll be fantastic again. I think this game's closer. I think Cambridge does bounce back. But I like Woodstock on the road, Coop. And I know that might sound like a bold prediction. I'm not going to overreact to that loss by Etowah. I think they have a little bit more experience. If Woodstock can stop the run, I like their chances. I think it's going to be close, but I like the Wolverines by 4.
I don't think it's overreactionary at all. I don't know what Cambridge has shown you with as much graduation as they had that would invoke a lot of confidence necessarily. Also, on the flip side of that, they lost to 7A Brookwood. I don't know how much I'm supposed to take away. Again, it's overreaction week 1 or week 2. We don't know. We can sit here and say that we feel a lot of different things, but until we know where Brookwood lines up, until we know where Etowah lines up, this is all just, we got one half of the goalpost, right? We have a starting point, but we have no measuring stick to end it with. So, look, here's the thing. Cambridge has Tyler Jones, a head coach. Fans of Cherokee County should know him from back in his days as River Ridge's offensive coordinator in their fantastic run in 2020. He had a meteoric rise through the coaching ranks since then. I think he's one of the better coaches that you'll find, especially in the 5A level. The question for me in this one is, can Woodstock's defense bow their neck in this one? Because that was, you gave up 36 points, right? That's really the big question. I don't worry about their offense. I don't see a world where Woodstock's going to walk into a game and be held to 14 points in this game, 21 points in this game. So it is a little tough on that one. That's my opinions out of the way. Here's the model. It likes Cambridge in this one, 34-17. I don't like it. I think it's very bold. I think it's still loving Cambridge a lot more than it should. But again, they did lose to a 7A team. It's going to give Woodstock a 14% win probability. So the model is not high on the Wolverines. One interesting thing to note about Woodstock in the model, even though they lost to Etowah, they still, if they played again tomorrow, if Etowah and Woodstock lined up again tomorrow, it would favor Woodstock by 1 point, which is very funny to me. But that's how the math works. You lost by 1 point. The model basically says, yeah, you lost. You were the favorite by 4 points. So how much am I supposed to punish you for that? And it basically says that, if we had to do it over again, maybe Etowah fumbles the hold instead of you guys, and then it flips the other way. So
sure. One thing I want to mention, Coop, and it'll be interesting to see how quickly Woodstock can get over that loss. Does it sit with them for a couple of days, or have they moved on? And I know sometimes as a coach, you're preaching, hey, next, it's that one's over with. There's nothing we can do about it. But it's when you coach 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, sometimes that does have a hangover effect. So we'll see if the Woodstock Wolverines do have a hangover effect, or if they're able to flush that and get off to and get Coach Pierce his first win of the season. And I think that I don't know what the watchability is there, Coop, but I think this is one of the more intriguing matchups we have this week with Cambridge and Woodstock. However, it is not our game of the week. Our game of the week happens to be an intra-county matchup between the River Ridge Knights and the Etowah Eagles. Etowah will be visiting River Ridge, so we will save our River Ridge chat for our second part of our game of the week preview. We're going to first start out with Etowah and their victory, since it's the game we just talked about. And Coop, I feel like you had a better beat on this one, but I tell you what again, this rivalry proves it is one. I feel like it's one of the best in the county, bar none.
Yeah, I don't know how you could say otherwise at this juncture. I mean, the past 2 years have been fantastic. The coaching has been elevated at those two schools recently. The talent has been elevated at those two schools recently. It feels like we're back to watching Etowah when they played, 2017, 2018, those Battle of Town Lakes back then. They were just instant classics all the time. It also felt that way with the penalties. There were at least 15 unsportsmanlike / personal foul calls in the game. I know neither coach is going to be thrilled with that. As fans, it's kind of fun to see because it just shows that they really, sometimes you say it's a rivalry and everybody kind of helps each other up and pats each other on the helmet. It's like, all right, let's move on. This was not one of those games. So I enjoyed it. Also, big shout out to Woodstock Live, by the way. Carried the game, was able to watch it without the crappy NFHS, blur screen thing. They did a great job. I think they're breaking in a number of new commentators. I thought they all did fantastic. So shout out to those guys over there. Again, fantastic program. And I know probably should have put that in the Woodstock section, but oh well, it's too late. I just wanted to throw it out there. So.
Well, and while we're sitting here talking about it, also all of the young AVTF students and production crews and staff that puts those games on, not just the voices, but the students working the cameras and behind the scenes. It's really elevating high school football in our area, and we certainly want to give them their shout out as well. But let's get back to Etowah in this game, Coop. Zeke Douglas, 143 yards. Passing, 122 yards rushing, accounted for 4 touchdowns, recorded a game-sealing interception. I think he would have, served popcorn if they'd asked him to at halftime, but just kind of did everything. One of the things I did see was that Kingston Caesar showcased his ability to run the football. He had 72 yards on 10 carries, so you're getting. I know it works out to a 7.2 yard, per carry average. And he's probably not getting that on every play, but enough chunk yardage to where he changes the pace. And then Walker Hughes with 4 grabs. Not huge yardage on the night with 35 yards, but Nick Pacini with the big 3 catches. And Coach Vavra talked about Nick coming into the season about how he might have an impact on the game. And he scored what turned out to be the go-ahead touchdown for the Eagles. 4 turnovers forced by Etowah. So I think I don't know if that had to do with nerves or whatnot, but a very opportunistic Etowah defense. And I think that that's something that Coach Vavra, he took over the play calling, and we'll talk to him momentarily. But that's something that he, I think, stressed, and his defense kind of showed up when it counted.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that the defense played physical, fast, free. And you talk about the offensive side of the ball, even though they may, Walker Hughes might have not had the big play, even though you might have thrown a little bit more underneath, it was still enough to keep Woodstock off balance. And the key for any mobile quarterback is to keep the linebackers from just keying in. Mm-hmm. Prove that you can throw it over the middle of the field. And when you have 2 big guys like Walker John Hughes, and you have Nick Pacini, very capable of doing that, and they did that effectively. They also utilized the flats pretty well. Kingston Caesar was a pretty good option out of the backfield, which was an element of his game that I don't think we had considered up until that point. But as just a release valve, if the linebackers do start containing you, just flip it out there to him, and he can make something happen with it. So all in all, I thought they did very well with their plan. So Art, if you're ready, let's get Coach Vavra on the line.
Let's do it.
And joining us now on the Cherokee County Endzone podcast is the head coach of the Etowah Eagles, Coach Vavra. Coach, thank you for being back with us again.
Yeah, 3 weeks in a row, guys. I'm feeling like I'm maybe kind of special a little bit. I appreciate it.
Well, I would say you certainly have put yourself in that conversation with another win in the Battle of Town Lake. Obviously, the last two times you guys have played, it's been just as close as any 2 games can be. But I want to ask, what did you see from your team? Because from our perspective, and I'll just throw myself in this, it looked like that from the game last year to this year, the quality of both teams improved dramatically.
Yeah, I think our kids, I was just really happy of the grit and the fight they showed, and I felt like that's 2 years in a row that they've kinda shown that, and, you have to go through that adversity during a game to kinda figure out how your team's made. Despite what the outcome is, and look, we were able to get the outcome that we wanted, but we needed to see adversity, and we saw plenty of it. It was just back and forth, and it's super emotional. And I had to remind myself, several times on Friday night, like, hey, relax, chill, and let's try to stay even here and not get too upset when something bad goes wrong. But yeah, just really, really proud of our kids and our coaching staff to find a way to get one more stop than them and find a way to win. So it's really, really awesome to be a part of.
Coach, you talk about getting one more stop on Friday night. Is it in the game plan going in to put your starting quarterback in the secondary to pick off a pass? Or, I mean, he had a phenomenal game on the offensive side, but tell us a little bit about Zeke and that decision to get him in the game. Has that been something you all thought about, or was that just spur of the moment? Hey, we're going to put him in there to make a play.
Well, it's funny you should ask that, Will. We made that decision during the course of the game, towards the end of the game, but it's something that we were kind of prepared for. We had been working Zeke at safety for probably a month or so during the summertime. And we got away from it a little bit because we started to kind of settle into our secondary guys and kind of felt like we were developing some depth and started feeling really good about the guys that we had back there. They've done it. They've done a really nice job of getting better over the course of the weeks. But Zeke is our best player on the team. And when the game is on the line, you got to have your best players on the field. And we made that decision. And I kind of looked at my DB coach. I was like, Coach Jackson, you sure about this? You want to get Zeke out there? He hadn't repped it in a few weeks or a little while. He goes, Coach, let's roll with it. I was like, all right, let's go. So we put him in there. We ended up getting a penalty because they were kind of going tempo at the end of the game. And I didn't even know they made that switch at the time. And so I'm yelling, I'm like, guys, we can't do that. We can't sub, when they're going tempo. We ended up getting a penalty. Well, it was a penalty worth taking because Zeke ended up being on the field and then making that huge play the next play. So yeah, it was something we've talked about, getting our best players on the field. And during the summer we started playing a lot of guys both ways, at least repping them on both sides of the ball, because we made a decision. Look, our best players got to be on the field, and we got to figure out what that looks like. So we quickly learned in the summer that Zeke could be one of our best safeties, but let's utilize them when we need them. And so we did that on Friday night, and it paid off.
Coach, on Friday, you guys had a drive that coming out of the half, Woodstock fumbles it first play, and then you guys have the ball. And in watching the game, I had to pause it to make sure that I saw that you guys had it for 6 minutes. And it was one of the slowest, most methodical, but running the ball effectively drives that I think you guys have put together in a long while. Can you walk us through how the offense, especially the run fits? I mean, I thought they did a really good job overall in the game. Can you walk us through how that growth happened over the last few weeks?
Yeah, our kids have bought into what we're doing. Go back to the off season. We talked about this in previous podcasts. They've bought into it. They're working their tails off in the weight room. They've gotten so much bigger and stronger. We're not real long on the offensive line. We're kind of stubby, but we're thick and we're strong, and our kids know what to do. And I got to give credit to Coach Isham, who's been on staff with me. We moved him from tight ends and Fs to the offensive line, and also hired Chris Pack, who is got him from Cal High School, but he's a good friend of mine. We worked together at Etowah in the past under Dave Sabella as assistants, and I've always had a ton of respect for him and the way he works and the way he develops offensive linemen. And those kids are doing a really good job for him, and he's doing a great job, he and Coach Isham, of building that camaraderie. And again, our kids are tough and they know what they're doing. Their assignment sound. We have some bust here and there, but for the most part, we're getting bodies on and we're playing with decent pad level. We got to get better always, but yeah, those guys are doing a really good job, and it's just a testament to the work they're putting in. We got a long ways to go, but I like the direction we're headed.
Coach, you mentioned last week that you'd be taking over, I believe it was last week, that you'd be taking over the play calls on the defensive side of the ball. How was that getting back to play calling, getting into a rhythm? And who were some of the guys on that defense that stood out for you on Friday night?
It was a lot of fun, Art. It was like I said, it was emotional, but it was a lot of fun. It's kind of rejuvenated me a little bit and from the role I was in. I mean, I'm still in that same role. It's added a lot more on my plate. I had to get my wife's blessing to do that. But she's good with it. And, I had a lot of fun. I wanted to bring some simplicity to our defense so our kids could play fast. And I think schematically, that's what we're doing. I think we also mentioned that on a previous podcast. But I had a lot of fun. Defensive player of the week for us was a kid that played for us last year, but kind of in a limited role. And he's a safety type body, but I never could get him to really figure that part out the way I wanted him to. So we slid him down to the outside backer or viper position, and he was working there, and he kind of really wasn't developing. I just said, let's move him back to safety and see if he can figure it out. And that was his first game back at safety, other than the scrimmage 2 weeks ago. And kid played his tail off. He had 10 tackles. He had a forced fumble. He had tackle for loss. He's the one that tackled Graham on that botch snap on the PAT.
Mm-hmm.
So he played his tail off. He did a lot of really good things. Starting to get a little bit more comfortable back there. Brandon Stewart had a caused fumble. He caused the first fumble of the game early in that first series. So got us off to a fast start. And he had, I think, 4 tackles and that caused fumble. Ben Gebhardt was really productive. Charlie DeWitt was really productive. Charlie had 8 tackles, I think. Sophomore corner. And then Bryson Graves, not as productive in terms of numbers, but got us lined up and kind of running the show from the linebacker position. And then Dalton Quick was really productive as well. So we had a lot of guys that produce. I think Donovan Pollard had 1.5 sacks and a tackle for loss. Had a couple big plays. Had some mistakes. It kind of hurt us, but those are the things that are going to happen in the first game. And I think we can learn from those mistakes. We are up early watching film with the guys this morning, and there's a lot to learn even when you win in a 1-point game. So it was a lot of fun though, Art. Had a good time calling it.
And Coach, you mentioned the botch snap there from Woodstock that ultimately ended up being the difference in the game. But from your perspective, one guy that we haven't talked about on this podcast yet that I feel like maybe Art and I may have done our homework a little better is Frank Schuster. When we think about Etowah, we think of some of the kickers that you guys have had, Carson Allen years ago, and then Schuster's been very reliable for you in the last couple of years. Can you talk about the comfort level that it gives you as a head coach to know that, okay, the game on the line, if we make this extra point, we're good, and you trust that operation more than trying to go for 2 with the win?
Yeah, absolutely. Frank didn't get to play, in our scrimmage 2 weeks ago. He had a little bit of a groin issue, but he was back this week, and he had a great week of practice. And I was able to bring on a kicking coach, which not a lot of high school programs have. Sometimes those guys get kind of lost in the mix, and you rely on them to do what they're supposed to. And so Coach Chuck Page, has done a great job with those guys. And yeah, I trust Frank. Frank's got a really strong leg. He's really reliable. He looked great at practice. And yeah, there was no doubt in my mind that he was going to, that he wasn't going to make that kick. I felt really good about it. And he put the ball in the end zone, had a couple touchbacks, which is so big to make the offense or your opponent start on the -20. That's just big. So yeah, I got a lot of confidence in Frank and feel good about him, and he's going to have a big year for us.
Coach, before we ask you about your opponent, and I'll let Will handle that, I want to ask maybe from a mindset point, emotional game Friday night against a rival. How do you get your team to get refocused on the task at hand, which is another football game, within 6 days?
Yeah, I think it's refocusing on the process, or it's getting our kids to understand that, we're great job of Woodstock, very emotional game, up and down. You guys deserve to enjoy that and celebrate that, but we put it to get to bed today. This morning it's to bed. We've moved on to River Ridge. We've got to refocus our energy and, our attention to detail. And there's a lot of things that we got to improve. So that's where the focus is. The focus for us is on communication offensively and defensively so that we can get lined up quicker We can get a call from the sideline, communicate that, and execute the call and line it up with urgency. And I think if we can do those things, then that's taking the next step for where our football team needs to be.
Well, Coach, as Art alluded to, your opponent coming up this week is the River Ridge Knights. I know you had to travel a long way last week, and this week you'll have to travel even a little bit longer. But walk us through what you've seen from River Ridge as you guys are taking a first look at them and what you think it'll take for your team to be successful on Friday night.
Absolutely. Yeah, River Ridge, they're always tough. We played against them a number of times, even going back to my old school where I was before. I've known Mike Collins for a long time. He's a really good football coach. His teams are always well prepared. They're very disciplined. They don't hurt themselves. And this River Ridge team is no different. I think they look a little bit different. I think they're kind of young on defense, and so they're trying to figure some things out. But they're still got really good players that are physical and well coached. And offensively, they do a good bit. Their quarterback, I feel like, is a good physical runner when they need him to run. He's not a kid that's going to pull it down and scramble on you, but they've got some design quarterback runs that are make you defend the 11th player. And then they've got good receivers, with the Rowe kid and some of the others. They got big, long receivers. They're big on the offensive line. They're very, very balanced. When we did the breakdown, of course, we only have a couple games or a scrimmage in a game, but they're 50-50 and run pass. And that's like, you'd rather see someone like 70-30. I feel a little bit better about that. But so they do a good job. They do a good job distributing the ball and their RPO game and their quarterback run game, like I said, and they do a good job of taking advantage of space. So, and then defensively, they're very active. They're all over the place, and we're going to have to do a good job of seeing guys and getting our eyes up on the offensive line when they're blitzing, and we can't run by guys, and we got to try to take advantage of space and get the ball to our athletes. So they present some challenges, and look, I always know what we're going to get from Coach Collins' team. They're, like I said, physical, disciplined, well coached, and so that's what we're expecting on Friday night.
Coach, you guys, like Will mentioned, will make the short trip across the other side of Woodstock to meet the River Ridge Knights for the 7th time. I believe River Ridge holds a slight advantage in that series, but we certainly do wish you the best of luck on Friday night, and congratulations for being 1-0 again to start the season.
Appreciate that, guys. Thank you. And do me a favor, when you all do picks this week, pick River Ridge.
The pressure's on. Coach, you mentioned that there are some River Ridge faithful that would love for Will Cooper to finally pick River Ridge and stop picking against him. But we'll see.
I historically don't.
We can't make any promises. You guys are going to have the bullseye.
All good.
Thanks a lot, Coach. We appreciate you again for joining us on the Cherokee County Endzone.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. Have a great night.
So thank you to Coach Vavra for being back with us on the program. We will get into the projections of this game in just a little bit. But first, we want to review what River Ridge did in week 1, and then we'll talk to Coach Collins, and then we'll get you all to the predictions. So, Art, I want to turn it over to you. River Ridge, let's talk about week 1. Obviously, a tough matchup against Sprayberry. It was a game that last week we had mentioned both teams were kind of unknowns. Seems like Sprayberry may be returning a fastball this year that we hadn't anticipated, and River Ridge went through a bunch of adversity. But I'll turn it over to you. What stood out to you in that result?
Well, I thought in the first half, we were getting score updates and River Ridge keeping pace with the Jackets. I believe that game was 13-10, if I'm not mistaken, at halftime, or River Ridge was within one score at halftime. But, the second half was a different story. Sprayberry just jumps all over River Ridge, final 48-20. And River Ridge scores late to kind of equal, maybe make that score respectable. But it's a young football team. We knew they would be. They've got some pieces. We talked about Hunter Lockerman, Micah Pugh, Luke Thompson, Andrew Rowe, some of those guys. But a very young offensive line that Coach Collins was telling us about. A lot of new faces on defense. So I think the growing pains were to be expected from River Ridge. I think we were, like you mentioned, we were more shocked that Sprayberry had as much firepower as they did after, they lost the guys like Jordan Edmonds, and I'm forgetting names now because I don't cover Sprayberry, but Jaden Duckett at quarterback, so elusive for the last 2 or 3 years, but Sprayberry goes on to win that one, and River Ridge has to have a really short memory as they welcome in an Etowah team that's red hot. We know that it'll be Hunter Lockerman. I don't have a ton of stats on that game from Friday night, but he's going to have to find a way to connect with. I think primarily Andrew Rowe is going to be a playmaker on both sides of football, and River Ridge. There's nobody's going to feel sorry for the Knights week in and week out, and those young men are just going to have to grow up fast, and they get an opportunity each and every Friday. I think that's a good thing, and they'll go through some growing pains. I think that's always the case when you have young players, but the opportunity to get that experience in a varsity football game on a Friday night, I think, is unparalleled.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, overreaction week 2, right? It's always we have to be horrible. We must be great. We don't know. Again, Sprayberry's in a very difficult region. If they get to the end of the year and they're 9-1, 8-2, River Ridge fans should be jumping up and down about that. And it's going to be counterintuitive because they've been in region for so long. But from here on out, River Ridge fans need to be Sprayberry fans because that'll help your opponent's winning percentage and your opponent's winning percentage. Or it won't help your opponent's winning percentage, but it'll help your opponent's winning percentage. It's so complicated, even I forgot. But either way, all of that to say, I tell you who will be able to tell us more about this. That is the man, Coach Collins. So if you are ready, Art, let's send it over to him and see what he has to say.
Always love having Coach Collins. Looking forward to hearing it.
And joining us now is the head coach of the River Ridge Knights, Coach Mike Collins. Coach, thank you for being back with us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely, Coach. We always look forward to it. I want to ask about your first game of the season. You guys went over and played Sprayberry, a common opponent that we've seen over the last few years. Still a tough team to play. Can you talk us through what you saw from your team in week 1 and some growth you've seen as you've come out of that game and moving into week 2?
It was a gutsy effort on our guys' part. I was proud of the effort. Really close game early, 13-10 at halftime. We played very well those last 4 minutes of the first half, which is crucial, but those first 4 minutes of the second half, they were able to get an explosive play on us and built up their confidence, and I think caused us to maybe lack a little bit of confidence as the game went on, and things kind of got a little out of hand as the game went on. A lot of explosive plays on their part. Had some misfits. Offensively, thought we moved the ball okay. We didn't finish well in the red zone. That's something we've been working hard on this week. But for the most part, all around, I love the effort. I thought we had a lot of young guys grow up throughout the night, and hopefully that'll be manifested as we move throughout the season.
Coach, earlier in our preseason podcast, we talked to you about your offensive line, and you told us, hey, we're going to be starting some young guys, maybe some freshmen in there. Well, what's your evaluation of those young guys and their performance when it mattered on Friday night? And did anybody kind of stand out as someone you look to maybe the next big River Ridge offensive lineman in the future?
Yeah, we started 2 freshmen and a sophomore on the offensive line on Friday night, and we went on my first drive. It was a 19-play drive, so I was super impressed with all 5 of those guys. Ellis Harvey stood out as a 9th grader. Did a phenomenal job. You could tell he was kind of getting used to the speed of the game as the game went on. So future's really bright with him. But mainly our older guys, Oliver Thomas and Luke Jones, man, they played lights out Friday. So they're having to lead those puppies, so to speak. You know what I mean? Lead those young guys and keep their confidence up. So I was pleased with their effort. They're having a good week of practice this week, so I think they're going to get better and better as the weeks go on.
Coach, when we were talking about your team in the preseason, one thing that stood out to us was the amount of talent that was lost on defense just from the last couple of years. Nobody cares what we have to say about it. What we want to hear from you is what did you see on Friday night that maybe some bright spots, some things in there that you saw that showed some growth that you can work with as you move into week 2?
Well, I think the defensive backfield I thought was really solid. D-line wise, they showed some bright points early in the game. As it got late in the game and the heat kind of started wearing on them, I think it was a little bit of a struggle out there. I think Bryce Miley, Luke Thompson were 2 guys that I thought that really stood out to me. I think they're going to have a really good year. We're about to kind of rally around them. Andrew Rowe had a great game. He was Defensive Player of the Week, and his leadership was unbelievable throughout the night. He knows there are going to be some bumps in the road, but man, he stayed positive the whole time, kind of encouraging those guys. So there was enough good things went on Friday that I think we can build off of.
Coach, I don't want to spend too much time talking about injuries, but you did have one on Friday. How does that psychologically impact a team? And how do you guys bounce back, not knowing whether or not that guy's going to be available this Friday night? And who, Is that an easy process for your team to get over, or with a young team, how do you manage that?
It's Archie knows this, the unfortunate part of football, isn't it? It's a part of football nonetheless. So I think it becomes kind of a your battle cry, so to speak. You want to go win, and play well for that guy. Because you never know this game that we love to coach and love to play. You just don't never know play to play how things are going to work out for you. So I think it's reality check of, hey, don't want to take anything for granted, but at the same time I think you've seen our guys want to do just a little bit more, rally around someone that has been just a tremendous part of our program, tremendous spirit, a great person, great personality, and a great player. So I think it's been a little bit of all that, a lot of emotions, as a game of football. So it's part of it, but there's ups and there's downs. And I think right now ours is just let's rally and not take anything for granted.
Coach, when we look at your schedule, we talked about this earlier. You guys have scheduled all 5 Cherokee County teams. Art and I view that as because you wanted to be on the show more, which we have taken into consideration, and we're happy to have you here in week 2. So that's what we're going to say it is. And that obviously starts this Friday with Etowah coming off a win in the Battle of Town Lake. Walk us through what you've seen from Etowah on film and some things that stand out to you, and ultimately what it'll take for you guys to be successful on Friday night.
Can't hide anything for you guys, man. I guess you've got me. You know my hand now. I love hanging out with you guys. So try to work it out so I can see you more, and you already figured it out. Exactly what it is, too. Exactly. Let me tell you, Vavra has done an outstanding job with these Etowah Eagles. They are way better than what I want them to look like. Some kind of way, we've had to find a way to contain him. But the problem is you got that number 1 out there on the flank that's hurt us every year, whether it's been a scrimmage game or a real game. So you put too many out there, you're going to loosen the box, right? You put too many in the box, you're out there single covering him. So that is a problem. And they've got a very good offensive line. Vavra's teams are always very strong. He does a great job in the weight room. So it'll be a tough task for us, but we look forward to it. It's going to be another great learning experience for our young guys to try to contain this offense. They're really good on offense, and they're solid and physical on defense. We'll have to run the football. If we can run the football, we'll have a chance Friday. Because that keeps the quarterback and number 1 off the field. That's where to start with us, and that goes with our young offensive line. Can we block them? Are we going to have a running back step up and fill those big shoes? Is Hunter Lockman going to be able to use his legs like we need him to keep that offense off the field and shorten the game up? And then we need to hit 1 or 2 explosive plays, and got to avoid explosive plays on our side. If we can do those things, maybe we can make it a ball game. We'll see what happens.
Coach, I almost feel like you're being a little coy. Maybe we can make it a ball game, man. You guys lead the series 4-2. This will be the 7th meeting all time. Coach, we take a lot of flack from the River Ridge community because I feel like we probably don't respect River Ridge enough or give you guys the proper amount of respect. But home game this week, anything special going on over at River Ridge this week for your home opener?
Yeah, we got our Buffalo's Youth Night this Friday. This is one of the best nights you can be at River Ridge High School for a football game. We got our K-8 guys coming out to be recognized. The community's doing a great job with our middle school program and our youth program. So we're going to honor those guys before the game, our football players and our cheerleaders, sponsored by Buffalo's. And, man, it is an electric night where those guys form a tone for our high school guys. And it's one night where K-12 comes together at one place at one time. So we're super excited about having those young guys out and watching us play Etowah.
Hey everyone, this is Will Cooper from the future. To apologize about this, but the end of the Coach Collins interview got corrupted when I tried to edit this. So I wanted to hop on here real quick and just let you know that any complaints can be made on Twitter to @TurdFergusonRPT. And that's where we'll field all complaints about that. Again, apologies to Coach Collins. Apologies to all of you River Ridge Knights fans. It's not anything anybody did wrong. It just happened to be corrupted. So that happens sometimes. We'll try and keep it working for the future. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the show. So thank you to Coach Collins for being with us on the show once again. Always a pleasure to speak with him. Art, no pressure that the players listen to us and can tell him verbatim what we said.
Hey, they keep receipts, Coop. So I gotta make sure I recognize the right guys. week in and week out here.
Yeah, a lot of pressure. Keeps us up at night. That's why we look so old, despite the fact we're we age with grace. Is what we'll say.
One of us is old, Coop. Let's be honest.
You're right. It's me. It's me.
Oh man, I mean, you make me feel great, Coop. I appreciate that. But anyway, we appreciate Coach Collins for coming on, and certainly we appreciate the Knight community for listening in. They might want to throw eggs at my vehicle as I run by Arnold Mill Road over the course of the week here. What we have to say this week, but then again, it could be overreaction. I said it when we talked about their review. I think Hunter Lockerman is going to have to really control this offense. And Coach Collins mentioned it. They're probably going to have to take the air out of the ball a little bit. Somebody's going to have to step up at running back. And, Lockerman's going to have to do it with both his legs and his arm. That's not something that River Ridge, that's something we're accustomed to seeing River Ridge quarterbacks do. Historically, under Coach Collins, they've had a dual threat quarterback who, even when you don't believe he's a dual threat quarterback, will surprise you and take off and can beat you with both. And again, Andrew Rowe is going to, I think he's the constant on defense. Coach talked about Ellis Holly, Oliver Thomas, and Luke Johns along the offensive line. Those guys are going to have to continue to bring along those young players. And then, you've got to find a way to get off the field, I think, defensively on third down. You can't let Etowah continue to convert or Zeke Douglas to get outside and turn maybe third and medium into a gain of 15 yards down the field, because we've seen what he can do running the football. So, and then you throw in Mr. Kingston Caesar at running back, and I think that creates a very big issue for River Ridge that they're going to have to grow up quick, and that those linebackers at front seven, somebody's going to have to step up and really key on Zeke Douglas, because he can make things very difficult for opposing defenses.
Yeah, I think this is a game where both teams really need to end the drives with kicks. And what I mean by that, if you've never heard that saying, is that we'll find success if we end the drive with a punt or with a kickoff. Because if we score, we're going to kick it off. Or if we punt, then that's fine. But at least we don't have the field flip on us right away, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a quick transition, because Etowah and Woodstock, they had their fair share of turnovers in that game. And you mentioned Etowah's defense forced a bunch of them. So for River Ridge, you talk about ball control is what Coach Collins was telling us about, taking the clock out and, making sure that we, take a little lesson from Coach Teeter. We're going to end this game by 9:45. If that's the game plan, those drives have to end in kicks. You cannot have a fumble or an interception that, it's 3rd and 12 and you're chucking a ball up. That's not going to do it. So I think that's an important dynamic in this game. I think the other dynamic is Etowah's defensive line, while maybe not having the high sack numbers, they did enough to be disruptive against a Woodstock offensive line that was fairly big. And you're going to have another offensive line this week that in River Ridge is inexperienced but big. So you got to keep up your production if you're Etowah. And then the flip side of that for River Ridge is, these offensive linemen, like when we talked to Coach Vavra earlier, maybe not the biggest guys in the world, maybe not the tallest, but they're thick, they've got good weight on them, and they're strong, and they can move people around. And their run game was greatly improved from week 1 compared to what we saw in the scrimmage. So this is a very interesting game where you kind of think about it. It's like, gosh, there's a real path where both of these teams win. I don't know who I feel great about in this one. So it's like I said, it's just a game where you hope you see a lot less turnovers than we saw in week 1. And if that happens, then I think this is going to be one heck of a game. You mentioned Woodstock-Cambridge kind of being one of those games that, this is going to be a lot closer than people think. I think this one is too. I think this will be a heck of a ball game.
Well, it certainly should be a heck of a ball game, Coop. River Ridge leads the series 4-2. Last outing, I believe, was back in 23. River Ridge won that one 27-24. So certainly we will have our eyes on this, as it is our game of the week. Coach Collins, Coach Vavra, we do appreciate both of you for joining us. And again, not afraid to answer the questions and really get out there and let us know what's going on inside the huddle, if you will, for each of those programs. So thank you again for joining us this week. Coop, I've got, before I move on, we talked about our winner. I like Etowah. I think they go 2-0 this week. I think this River Ridge team is going to go through some growing pains, and they'll be better this week. I think they'll score more, but I think it's going to be a closer game. I think it's Etowah one score. I got the Eagles by 6, maybe 28-22, something like that.
Yeah. So personally, I feel like I don't know where to line up on this. Both coaches have made mention of my predictions. So, I mean, this is a loaded gun that I'm pointing at myself either way. I mean, if we're not far off from just getting clipped and put at the beginning of hype videos now.
It should be. It should be. Like that should be a badge of honor for us.
We have been before.
Yes.
So, if that continues, then so be it. Here's what I think. I think River Ridge wins this game in a real nail biter. I think home field advantage helps, and I think they kind of rally around the fact that they're at home and shaking off a couple of things that really didn't go right on Friday. With that being said, the model is very confident on River Ridge in this one. It likes the Knights by 14. It puts River Ridge with an 82% win probability. I think that is straight up drugs, but it loves them. So we'll ride with the model again, as I said, and I know, the River Ridge fan base is mad at me, so hopefully this week you'll be happy with me for saying this. The model is right more than I could ever hope to be, so I'm sticking with it, and that's the story, and I'm sticking to it. So there you go.
All right, we're going to move on, but we're not going to get off River Ridge yet, Coop, because there is something I want to bring up. Like, you took some flack, and I kind of piled in on you on over the last week for our good friend Belinda Jenkins. I'll be willing to call her out by name because she's been on the podcast before in its previous iteration. And man, she was saying, like, Will, what do you have against River Ridge? And I tried to defend you a little bit. You don't go with your heart, you just go with the math, right? And the math says that this is what it is. But Miss Jenkins was giving you a hard time, and here we go. The predictor was right about River Ridge, so maybe she'll cut you some slack this week, Coop. But I don't know. Night Nation's been pretty tough on you.
It has been, and that's so strange because I feel like over the last few years I've been pretty good to them.
Yeah, you've been a cheerleader for them. Yeah.
And for some reason, some comments I made back in 2020 or 2019 or something put me on the, forever blacklist that I can never get off of. And if that's the case, I'm probably with every fan base in the county at this point, because I'm sure I've said something about every team that has upset someone out there. Yeah, look, I mean, the model is just a compilation of numbers, and one thing that I promised when we started it, and an under advisement from you and from some of my friends, is let it be an experiment. Let it be what it is, and don't look at something that you might even say, I know for a fact this is wrong, and correct it. Just let it do its thing and move on with it. And that's what we do. And last week it happened to be correct about River Ridge. If you're a River Ridge fan, hopefully this week it's correct. That's what a mathematical model does. If you're a fan of a team, it should be a model that every week you look at and you go, oh, I don't agree with that. Or, yeah, that would be great. That means that the math is working. It means it's seeing the unseen, that it doesn't care about emotion or psychology or any of that. It's just, what did the numbers say you should do on the football field? And again, it thinks you should be Etowah by 14. Like we talked about with Creekview earlier in the show. If you win by 10, if you win by 7, if you win by 1, the model does not punish you for not meeting the margin that it expects. That's not how it works. It is a win probability first. So as long as that win probability goes from 82 before the game kicks off to 100, then you're good. Flip side for Etowah. It thinks you only got an 18% chance to win. If you win this one, it's going to really, tell it like, hey, man, you got us way too low. And it'll be a time that we come on next week, and I'll tell you about how much Etowah's playoff chances have improved, just like we talked about with Creekview and Sequoia this week. So everybody chill out. It's week 2. All right, this conversation's for October. I don't need all the smoke in my timeline when it's August 22nd or whatever it was. It's like, man, we're just getting started here, and I'm already getting, put on.
Come on, let them know.
Lists.
You want all the smoke, man. You want all of the smoke, and we'll talk about it. That's crazy, man. I hope Coach Vavra's listening, because you said they only got an 18% chance to win this ball game. maybe a little bit.
I didn't say anything. I'm reading what the screen says. I just got done saying my personal opinion. And then I give you what the numbers say.
Man,
and again, the numbers at this point in the season are only it's still tying in 2025. Okay,
right.
So everybody, it's starting to come off of 2025. We have to wean it off. People are going to say that's not the right way to do it. I'm telling you, we tried to predict over 20,000 games, doing it with just the season that you're in numbers. It's awful. You're more accurate if you wean it off. Does it mean it's going to be slow sometimes? Yes. Does it mean that it's wrong more often? So do with that information what you will. But I personally think River Ridge wins this game by like a field goal or something. The model just doesn't agree.
All right. And I think Etowah wins by 6. So there we have it. There we have it. I think, and we'll move into our man versus machine segment, but I almost feel like we need to have man versus machine, because I think you are not, while I'm all in on the math and the Cooper predictor, but I feel like you're trying to hedge your bet a little bit, because sometimes it gives you a result that's like, it doesn't see what I see. And
sure. But yeah, I mean, that's the point of it, though, is that it's because here's the thing. Anybody, and you can attest to this, because you have been silently going up against the predictor for 6 years now, because I built it in 2020.
Right.
There's a reason that it is up 15 Travis Scott meals on you to this juncture, right? Because even when I see it, and I like to think I'm humble when it comes to my like personal, what I know about football. I can give you the winner for this game. I'm not confident in that. I just, there's too many variables, especially in high school football. The thing that the math does is that it proves time and time again, when I look at a result and I go, no way, it's wrong. It's right.
It's right
more often than I am. So if I'm going to sit here and tell you guys that I'm going to try and give you the most accurate information possible, it's the best tool I've got. And it's really the best tool that, I'm going to argue this, anybody in the state's got. Anybody in the 8 states we cover's got.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I know that some people would, but we should have a little competition on that. We'll put a pin on that in that, Coop. We're going to go to our man versus the machine prediction. Can you go ahead and tell, I know you're gloating about how much you've owned me over the last 6 years, but can you go and let everyone know what the standings are through, I know the one game we did, the Roswell Walton game and the Corky Kell, and then the last 3 games this past week. Where do we stand?
Yeah, it hasn't been good for either of us. We're both 1-3. You were right on Calhoun. I was wrong. I picked Jefferson. So that was where we disagreed. We're both wrong about Grayson.
Wow.
I don't even know what to say about what's going on at Grayson. You mentioned last week they had an ad out on Twitter that they were looking for an offensive line coach. They may have a whole bunch more ads coming up before the end of the year for new coaches.
Yeah.
And then we both had Carver Columbus, and Douglas Atlanta beat them. Credit to Douglas for that. Again, that's just kind of the unseen hand working in that one. So we're both 1-3. And nobody's got anything to gain here. We're both square one. And I'll also go ahead and take it on the chin here. The model was really bad in Georgia week 1. We only hit it 63%. We're about 10% off of our typical expected pace for historically in week 1 we hit it about 74%, so 63% is real low. The reason for that is that there were 35% of all GHSA games in week 1 and week 0, but in week 1 were predicted at less than 60% win probability. And the reason I tell people that win probability is the most important is that if a game has a 56% win probability, people view that and say, okay, well, the model's wrong because it predicted this team to win. The model's telling you there's a 44% chance I'm wrong. I'm not super confident in this pick. So if you're like bragging to your friends, I wouldn't use this game. Pick a different game. And the model was wrong. It was wrong. Like, I think we hit 42% on games between 50 and 60%, way off. The math would say that it'll flip. It's not a guarantee, though, so we may be low in Georgia this year, but that just full accountability on that. So that's a long-winded way to say that, but hopefully, did that make sense?
It made sense. And truthfully, Coop, any person who follows statistics and numbers knows there's usually a regression to the mean at some point. So at some point, I think things will fall in line for the predictor, and I'll have to be on my game to keep up against the machine. This week, some challenging games. Again, especially with the overreaction or reaction from results from week 1. We've got Cass taking on Sprayberry, Harrison taking on East Paulding, and Coffee taking on Ware County. And Coop, I've got Cass, Harrison, and Coffee as winners this week in our man versus machine competition.
Yeah, and here we go again, because we're only going to have one game that's different. And it's important for Cherokee County, by the way, because Cass, the future opponent of the Grizzlies, Sprayberry, the former opponent of the River Ridge Knights, both these teams have a rooting interest. So River Ridge and Creekview are going to be rooting for Cass and Sprayberry collectively. And well, I have it the opposite. So I've got Sprayberry winning that one, and then I do agree with you in Harrison and Coffee. So yet again, this is another week of we're either going to be really good or really bad, and the only game that separates us. I mean, at some point we're going to have to find something, or else we're going to end the season and be like 50-50.
Right?
Be like, well, we picked all the same ones.
We're gonna have to pick more games. It was my genius to settle on 3, but maybe that was a flaw in our competition. Or we can use a rating to rank teams, but we'll just call it our power rankings. And I'll go ahead and get started. I think I had them at the bottom last week, and I've got Cherokee at number 6 after week 1.
Yeah, we've got Cherokee at number 6 as well. They were my number 5 last week, below Etowah, but obviously both those teams moved after their first game. So
number 5, I've got River Ridge falling, dropping all the way down to number 5. I am curious to see, I was, again, probably overreacted, but I like that the competition at the Battle of Town Lake. So I've got River Ridge at number 5, and a position they haven't been in my power rankings for a long time.
So for number 5, I have Woodstock sitting at number 5 in my rankings. Again, real close to Etowah, but still 5th.
Okay. All right, we have a little bit of a disagreement here, but I've got Woodstock at number 4, and not, again, I think when we look at 2 through 6, there's not much that separates these teams right now in the season.
Yeah, so we've got Etowah at number 4. Again, did enough to move up 2 spots according to the predictor. It still only puts them about 1 point ahead of Woodstock, just because you win by a point. That's not how that works, but it's. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
So Etowah is our number 4 team.
So that gives me Etowah at number 3. I'm just going on based on the head-to-head. 1 point victory over 1 point or 100 points. They beat Woodstock. So right now in the season, they are my number 3 football team.
Yeah, we got River Ridge at number 3. I know you're going to say that's high, just like you did last week.
That's strong.
The model already kind of expected them to lose to Sprayberry, so it's not going to punish them too much for a game that it felt like it knew. And here we go. So River Ridge number 3. They did drop a spot though.
They did, and I think our top 2 now is consistent. Creekview at number 2. Again, I would have loved to. I think if we look at that, we would have loved to seen Creekview to go up 33-0 in the first half. It took them a while to get started, but nonetheless, I think they're settled in at quarterback. They're settled in at running back. They got a big win. I think they'll be tested with some team speed this week, but I like the Grizzlies at number 2.
Absolutely. We like Creekview at number 2 as well. It's real close with River Ridge right now. Strength of schedule is really kind of dragging Creekview down. But in terms of just, that's different than the PSR strength of schedule, by the way. That's an entire different statistic. But Creekview number 2, and it's close with River Ridge at number 3. So you got kind of like a little gap there that, either team, if they overperform, underperform even slightly, that could change dramatically.
And of course, that leaves Sequoia at number 1, where they've been since Moby Dick was a minnow.
Yeah, look, Sequoia did nothing but show the model that it was correct to be in love with them and keep them at number 10 through the preseason, or number 9, through the preseason rankings. And it also still loves them. Again, have them number 6. If anything, it just moved their win region chance to 40%. So congratulations, Sequoia. You have once again, you've stayed at number 1, like, I don't know how long it's been, but if we did a week count, it's been ridiculously long. So
Exactly. So there are our Cherokee County Endzone power rankings for Mr. Cooper and Mr. Mosley. Coop, Friday night, opening week of high school football in the great state of Texas.
It is.
For that second tier level of football.
My words, not yours.
But in any event, where are you going to be on Friday night, and what you got going on?
Yeah, we'll be up the road here in Salina. We got the Bobcats. They're going to be playing Legacy School of Sports Sciences. This is a private school that's kind of like an IMG Academy type. It's like a boarding school for kids that are trying to get into sports. Not trying to get into sports, but I mean like trying to be developed into, next level type guys that we see again. NFL Academy, IMG Academy, those type places.
Maybe a Rabin Gap, kind of?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. One of those schools that you kind of end up at, and you're just trying to get to the next level and be a top level performer at your sport. They have a really good basketball program, really strong baseball program. In football, though, they're relatively new. We don't know what to expect from them. The Cooper Predictor has them has the game 54-17 in favor of Salina. So that's a 97% win probability for Salina. Salina is under a lot of transition. Just Google Salina High School. And we're breaking in a new coach, Coach Mark Bindle. Fantastic man. I think a lot of him. He's changed things a little bit, but still kind of the standard is the standard up here. Again, they've won 7 state titles, so have a reputation to uphold. And they also move up to 5A, Art. So, kind of getting, we've been 4A for the last 7 years, I want to say. Now that we're in 5A, it's become more of the Frisco Panther Creeks. We're still below Duncanville type teams, but, it's 6A, 7A in Georgia. Draw your own conclusions from that. So a lot of transition for Salina. We'll see how it goes. But this is, again, I don't think the model's right that they're going to win by as much as it says they will. I think it'll be one that we're kind of on the edge of our seats for. But we're excited to be back out there, man. A kickoff temp should be right at about 101. So y'all go ahead and pray for me. And we'll try and bring home a dub.
Before I let everyone know where I'll be on Friday night, 100-degree temperature. I assume that high schools use the wet bulb in Texas. Also, is that, and they're not allowed to practice when it's 100 degrees, but when the wet bulb is above, or whatever it is. But is that the case in Texas?
Yeah, it is. So I don't know if this is true in Georgia, because when I played football, we were just kind of starting the whole wet bulb thing. And I remember our coaches going to like the edge of the creek at Kenny Askew Park and holding it under a tree and being like, 99.9 boys, let's, pad up. Or you have to do it at the 50-yard line at practice time. The problem is that we haven't had any, our low yesterday was 87 degrees. So the wet bulb doesn't really ever get to the point that you can practice. So luckily we have an indoor practice facility at Salina. But I know some schools like the one we have up north in Gunner, they've been practicing in their FFA building because it's at least got fans for the animals and stuff, and they can clear it out and it's dirt. So it's somewhat similar to a football field. But just like in Georgia, and I know people always joke about this, but wet bulb is irrelevant for kickoff. You can, it can be 112 and they're going to kick the thing off. So our wet bulb has been very high, though, to answer your question. Yes.
Fair enough, Coop. So I just had to throw that in. And we had a conversation about that on the radio last Wednesday at the Corky Kell Classic, and just the idea. And I know that's been a hot topic also on Twitter, where we've had some coaches who've weighed in and been pretty opinionated across the Southeast on that. Coop, I'm going to be over in Rockmart on Friday night as the 101.1 The Pulse WLJA will be broadcasting live from Rockmart High School. We've got a lot of festivities going on out there. The Battle of Polk County. Rockmart won this game last year 56-7. They're taking on Cedartown, who leads the series 54-26-2, as these Polk County rivals have not played anyone else more times than each other. Certainly, Rockmart lost to Dalton, a resurgent Dalton football team, 35-21. Cedartown beat Ridgeland 51-7. Two legendary coaches in their own rights, Coach Tommy Atha at Cedartown, coming over from Darlington up in Rome, and then Coach Richard Finley coming over from Bowden, where he did nothing but win 4 state championships. So should be a fantastic football game. Cedartown, both historic football programs looking to make their way back into the postseason and make deep runs as they represent Polk County. So that's where we'll be. things to look out for. I think running back Zeke Brown, Jalen Johnson, wide receiver, a big one. Cedartown's not going to throw it a ton, but Johnson, certainly a threat. They've opened up just a little bit, a little bit different than the wing T Cedartown that we've become accustomed to seeing. But I think Rockmart and their new quarterback, Charlie Cannon, who comes over from Coosa, certainly might give the Yellow Jackets the edge. Again, 56-7 last year. I don't think it'll be that big of a spread this year, but we will certainly bring you all the action on 101.1 The Pulse. You can listen in live at 1011thepulse.com. You can download the app, or you can tune in on your terrestrial radio if you're in the listening area of north central Georgia. And before I forget, I got to give a shout out to Dave Garner. We've got to get him on the podcast at some point. I know he's a busy man as a sports director over there for 93.7, 101.1 The Pulse, but he is the voice of Friday Night Lights here in North Central Georgia on The Pulse, and got to give a shout out to Dave and all the great work that he does over at the radio station.
Hey, he likes to big time us. We go on his program. We're like, hey, come join us on ours, and he just won't do it.
Small potatoes over here, man. That's
you're up on that stuff, man. Where do you? I mean, for a. I'm about to say older gentleman, but then I'm going to be,
you're
I'm
going
to be thrown against the wall.
It's a Tell the Truth Tuesday, man. Come on.
Well, as an older gentleman, how are you so in tune with the lingo of the children's, as they say?
Well, you have to be versatile. One thing that helps, I have a dad who was born in the 50s, so I get that lingo. And I have children that were born in the 2000s, and I coach kids that are now even younger than them. So I pick up on their vernacular, and then I find ways to interject it in my conversations to make myself feel relevant. But trust me, Coop, around certain audiences, there's a lot of eye rolls, a ton of eye rolls. So, and I would say it definitely starts with my own kids. They don't like it when I use their language.
Yeah, well, you can't win them all.
Not at all. Not at all. Well, Coop, I think we've run out of things to talk about. Certainly some great football games going on around the area. Milton Blessed Trinity is one that comes to mind that's local to my neighborhood, just outside of our coverage area. But we will certainly see two of the better football programs, certainly in Fulton County, but across classifications in 5A and 6A this weekend. Sandy Creek going over to Douglas County. Douglas County lost a heartbreaker in overtime to Newton. We'll see if they can bounce back. Sandy Creek looking like giant killers after that win over Grayson. And as you mentioned earlier, they might be looking for a whole lot of new replacements on that football team. A lot of talent, but certainly easier said than done. We mentioned Gainesville. We didn't talk about them a ton, but they got Mollywop Buford. And Buford, what happens? They get another great transfer to come in. The rich keep getting richer. So in any event,
need a little in-season reinforcements.
Well, I tell you what, and we'll follow that development certainly throughout the season. We won't follow it as closely, but as Buford is not so close to home, but it is a developing story with the additional transfer coming in. But more to come on that. Coop, it's been great as always. I appreciate you and all that you do. I don't know if people understand how much work goes into the Cooper Predictor and the preparation that Will does. So I just want to make sure everyone knows he's not just another pretty face on this podcast. I can promise you that.
Well, I'm not a pretty face at all, so that wasn't much of a compliment, but I'll take it as such. I appreciate you.
We're gonna have to start the Will Cooper fan club, man. It's and look, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right?
I suppose if you start the fan club, I think it's just going to be you. Sorry, bud.
In any event, we appreciate you all listening and tuning in to the Cherokee County Endzone podcast. Again, tell your mom, tell your dad, tell everyone you know about our project, what we're doing here for Cherokee County. And again, our platform is to make sure that we have a platform that can showcase these athletes, these student athletes here in Cherokee County and our surrounding areas. We thank you as always for joining. Have a great night, everybody.